Knowles on the News. Susan Knowles.
So how is everyone doing? I hope you're doing fine. I hope that the election process hasn't gotten to you and driven you totally out of your minds yet. I know it's something that has been on a lot of people's minds. I just want to talk to you a little bit about it. I know we're probably inundated with all the information that's coming in from candidates from both parties. I mean, I think if you listen to this information long enough, it will just send you over the top. And we have to be careful. We always talk about the race hustlers. There's so many of them, and we know who they are. At the drop of a hat, they're right out there trying to stir things up, trying to get everybody excited in a negative way, I might add. And I see the same thing happening in the election. I mean, I don't want to name names. I will if I have to. I've talked about it before. It doesn't really matter. The hustlers are there on both parties again and on both sides. And I see people who, unfortunately, appear, at least, to be wanting to promote their book or whatever the case may be, or to help a candidate, and they're out there stirring up false information. I've seen that a lot. And in particular, in regards to delegates, I mean, I know when we get so emotionally involved, we don't want to stop and look at what the truth really is. It's so much easier just to retweet something or to share something and go, yeah, see there, this person lied about this and that. You can do that. You can certainly do that, and a lot of people have. Or you can stop for a minute and research things. Find out what the truth really is. Because it's not a lot of what you've been seeing, I have to tell you. It just isn't. And as far as the rules are concerned with the delegates, the rules are the rules. Each state has their own rules. They can do whatever they want. It's not lying. It's not cheating. It is what it is. Now, I think if they change those rules in the middle of the process, you may have an argument there, but you have to again see, are they allowed to do that? Is that what their state calls for? And some of these people who are coming on and saying, oh, I didn't get to vote and this and that and the other, some of them are being found out that it's just not the truth. And again, some people are looking for their 15 minutes of fame, and this is what they do. And they are okay with lying to you. There are other people who want to make a name for themselves on radio or TV, and they're lying to you as well. And I don't know how they justify it. I really don't. It's not right. No matter what the objective is, you can't lie about things. You have to be truthful. And I say that for anyone. And as I've told you, I am not pro-Trump. I am not pro-Cruz. I am pro-America. Do I have a leaning one way or the other? Yes, I do. I am a constitutionalist. I very much am a constitutionalist. And I've heard people say, well, maybe we just need to put the Constitution away for a little while, get these things straightened out and bring it back. You can't do that. Ronald Reagan even warned about things like that and warned about socialism. I mean, when you take away the Constitution, what are we? We're not America. We really aren't. We're not what we've always had. And you may disagree with me, and that's fine. But that's just the way I see it. But when it comes down to it, I'm going to do what's best for America and see which candidate is best for America. And I've told you before, I have some real disappointments in what I have seen with Donald Trump's behavior. I just don't want another buffoon in the White House who just is willing to say and do, whatever. George Bush was always laughed at for the way that he acted. Now, George Bush, his behavior didn't come close to what Donald Trump's is. And again, you may not want to hear me say that because you're so in for Donald Trump, and I get that, but it doesn't excuse the behavior. Doesn't mean that he's not the right candidate or can't be president, but he needs to clean it all up. And he needs to come out and talk about some of the actual things that he's going to do, has done, will, whatever the case may be. Instead of saying, we win a lot, it's huge, it's really huge, that's not the winning strategy. It doesn't say anything to me. And I also want to, give opportunity and time to hear Donald Trump. I want to give opportunity and time to hear Ted Cruz. John Kasich, no. John Kasich is just a plant, in my opinion, who is in there because he's taking George Soros' money, and George Soros has already in his mind, of course, who he wants to win. Let's just say Hillary. And he's doing everything that he can do to make that happen. And John Kasich, who probably doesn't mind the money, lining his pockets, and I look at it as maybe selling his soul, he's all too happy to oblige. Not the person I want as my president. Sorry, just not. And between Trump and Cruz, is anybody perfect? Absolutely not. These are two men. Two human beings. And that's why I've said in the past, when people say, will you pledge your allegiance to Donald Trump? No, I won't pledge my allegiance to Donald Trump. I won't pledge my allegiance to Ted Cruz or any other person. I pledge my allegiance to God. That's it. When you start talking about pledging your allegiance to a person, didn't we just criticize Obama for doing that years ago with the little kids in kindergarten or first grade, whatever it was, and their little song to, President Obama? It was like Chairman Mao's song. I mean, come on. We said that was ridiculous. We were all against that. So why would we be for this? And I know that people are feeling, well, this is desperate times. We have to take desperate measures. What we have to do is remember who we are. And for me, I follow biblical principles, period. I don't care about the election as much as I care about what God is going to look at me and say. I could care less when I'm standing in line one day and God says, hey, Susan, who'd you vote for? Was it Donald Trump or Ted Cruz? It's not going to matter. And in the bigger picture, this election is just a small, minute part of what is going on in this world that we need to concern ourselves with. There's so much happening behind the scenes that we don't even probably know about because we've been so focused on the GOP. And again, if you're concerned that something is happening with the RNC, something that isn't right, or you don't like how things are done, you don't like how the delegates are chosen, well, then you'll have to work on changing that. You'll have to, in your local states, work on that. You'll have to, talk to the RNC about changing the way they do things. That's how it's done. It's not an overthrow. You can't do that. I mean, I guess you could, but I don't know where it's going to get you. And it's not something where you threaten to do X, Y, and Z if they don't do what you think they should do. Especially when it's been done the same way for so many years and the same things have happened in the past to other candidates. Just making up things and saying, well, this is stealing the election. Come on. You know better than that. It's allowing your emotions to get in the way. Do we need changes in this country? We absolutely do. Are we headed down a wrong path? We've been headed down a wrong path for quite some time. And I'll tell you, and I know that a lot of people, the answers aren't necessarily in this world. I mean, if you haven't already guessed that, then maybe you should kind of look around. Because we're sitting here and I think we're kidding ourselves. If we think that this election is going to change everything and make everything okay, it's not. Now, it could help potentially and get things moving in the right direction, but I think we have a long time to get things right. And I don't think the way that you get there is by being like the people that you say that you despise, by doing the same tactics or spreading lies, some that you may not know that they're lies, and some that are intentionally being spread, knowing they are lies. We can't do that. I mean, who are we when we do stuff like that? How does that make us any different than anybody else? Again, those people that we say that we don't like, those people that we say that we don't respect and look up to. And for God's sakes, with this Paul Ryan thing, let it go. Paul Ryan doesn't want to be president. Not this time. And if he comes back and comes into the RNC and says, oh, I was just kidding the whole time, okay, then you got to do something about it then. Can we take the GOP's word on anything? No, I don't think that we can. I think they've proven that if they stand there and look you square in the eyes and say something, most likely they could be lying to you because they've done it over and over to the American public. But keeping this going about him and not even focusing on the candidates that are in there is not getting us anywhere. I think potentially you should be worried about people like Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush coming back in at the last minute and saying, well, since we couldn't decide on anybody, here I am. I'm ready to serve. You know, those are people that are more likely to be in. And then, you know, as a Trump supporter, I think those people out there, you need to ask yourself, what if Trump chooses John Kasich as the vice president? Do you think that's possible? Would you be happy with that? Especially knowing about the Soros money? Somebody, again, that you absolutely hate or say that you do? Are you willing to say, oh, that's not a problem? No, I don't know if he's going to do that or not. But wouldn't it be a good way to get some more, more delegates, more votes, too, from the Kasich side? And Marco Rubio's already come out and said that he thinks that Ted Cruz is the most conservative. But when you listen to him, he's not saying, I'm going to give my delegates to Cruz or, what I've already accumulated. He hasn't said that. And to me, as somebody who is a former practicing attorney, I listen to the words and how they're said. And I think he leaves the door open. I don't know if that's the door open to come back in. I don't know if that's the door open to be vice president. I don't know if that's the door open to throw everything to Donald Trump. Who knows with these people? You don't ever really know what they're going to do. And you have to keep on top of things. And if you think that these career politicians, and I'm talking about people who've been in there 30 years, 20 years, ones that are very comfortable, if you're still believing those people, then I don't know why. Because they're going to do and say, for the most part, whatever they need to do and say to keep their jobs, to keep their cushy jobs. And all the money and the retirement and the speaking engagements they're going to have and everything else, they're not going to want to give that up. It's a shame that we don't have people who go into politics, and this has been this way for, good Lord, I don't even know how many years. I mean, 100? I don't know. But it's a shame that we don't really have people who go in to want to really serve and not make it a career, but make it about doing the right thing. There are very few people that I think exist like that today in any area. And I think politicians especially. As they say, if their lips are moving, they're probably lying. So that requires you and me to do a lot of work on our own to determine and separate fact from fiction, lies from the truth. It's very important. And again, you can't let your emotions and your support for a candidate cloud your rational mind to the point that it makes you jump into the fray knowing that what you're doing is also spreading a lie. How do you when this election's over, are you going to be able to look your kids in the eyes knowing what you did? You're going to be able to look yourself in the eyes knowing what you did. I mean, so again, it's important for us to remember who we are as people, as for those who are Christians, as Christians, to do what it is that we know is right and not become a part of the deceit that is so rampant out there right now. Maintain who you are. Do your best. And I'm going to tell you what, the elections are going to be what the elections are going to be. They really are. I don't know how much control we really have over all of it. And we may think we have a lot of control, but, when it comes back down to it, I think money talks, and money has a lot of control, and, you'd be surprised about things that are happening that we don't even know about. And if listen to some of my past shows and some of my guests, and I've read most of my guests that come on. I've read every single book that they've written, and I've looked at some of their resources. And some or most of what they're saying is absolutely true. And I think if people had the time to read and see for themselves, they would be shocked at what they thought was the way government was run and how things were run and how it really isn't. So I would just say, do your best. Have a clear conscience about what you're doing and the decisions that you're making. Don't get into the fray with the people who are just hustling you, because it benefits them and not you. I want the United States to be benefited. I want those people who say and claim that they love the United States, I want them to prove it. I want them to show me that they really mean it. I'm tired of being lied to by anybody. I don't care if they're a businessman, businesswoman, VP, president, or the guy who happens to move up the ladder from city council on up. I'm tired of it. And I think we're going to have to, whether we like it or not, become more involved in what's going on. Be ready, willing, and able to expose those who are lying, because our country does depend upon it. And I don't know, people have talked to me, do you think we can turn this around? I don't know. I really don't know. I never thought our country would be where it is today. And I know you're thinking the same thing that I am, that you knew things maybe were getting bad. You knew how bad it was under Obama, but you never thought we'd be here. And just let me remind you, Obama's not done. He's still around. And he may leave the White House in 2017, but he's not going away. If you think he's going to go into retirement, first of all, he's going to be looking to spend somebody else's money when he goes on vacation, just like he has the Americans' money. He's going to be looking for money for his pockets. He's going to be out there in every speaking engagement, every conference, every TV appearance, everything he can. And as I've said to you before, I think maybe a year or less, he's going to hightail it right over to the UN. He wants to be the guy at the head of everything. And for him, I believe he thinks that's the UN. And I can see him going over there and just stirring it up. And if you think that he went on an apology tour for the United States, if he gets in a place like the UN, there won't be apologies. It'll be that United States there, X, Y, and Z, and how horrible is that? You can count on that. Going around the entire globe with no holds bar, just saying whatever he wants about the United States. I mean, that's a person that, looking back, in hindsight's always 20/20. That's a person that in the very beginning, when he was trying to run for whatever office, he should have been voted out at that point. Should never have been able to get in. And once something gets in, a disease gets in, it just starts growing, right? And these people, these politicians who don't really care about anything but themselves, they don't care about America, they don't care necessarily about their state, they just want to get in to profit. That's, our whole system is set up for politicians to get in and make tons of money and want to do whatever they can to keep that money. How can the system not be as corrupt as I believe it is today when you have that kind of carrot dangling out in front of everybody's face? I mean, my God, the Congress, they get inside information that you and I can't get as far as, trading stuff even. Because they get that information and it's legal. There's nothing illegal about it. They get information on financial information that we don't get. And they can make decisions based on that, and it's not considered insider trading. So when you have something like that and your world is so totally different than reality in everybody else's world, you're not connected to the people that you were elected by. You're not like them anymore. You've been totally, quote unquote, elevated into this new place. For the most part. Not everybody, but for the most part. So you want to change something that's going to make a big difference. Let's start there. Figure out how we change all of that. And again, that's going to be something so hard to do because when somebody's getting rich off of that, they're not going to want you to change it, and they're not going to like the fact that you're going to try to change it. But one of the ways, get these cronies out. Get these people who've been in forever and want to die, sitting at the desk, from old age. Get those people out. And then make sure that the new people that you're bringing in are different from the ones that you just kicked out. That's a start. It's a small start. It's a small step. But you know what? You got to start someplace. We have to change a lot of things about our system that has just become corrupt. And when we keep electing people in office and then don't make them adhere to the Constitution, we end up where we are right now. Because we all know there have been allegations that this president has not followed the law in a lot of instances and has not followed the Constitution, and yet we don't do anything about it. Why? Because he is an African American, the first African American president, and nobody wants to speak out because they don't want to be considered a racist. The truth has been silenced and continues to be silenced. We have to face that. And then we have to make sure that we don't fall into that trap again. People are going to have to start speaking up and taking risks, I think, that they've never taken before. And especially when it comes to their First Amendment rights. And it's not done I'm not saying do it in anger, but I'm saying speak the truth. Speak the truth in love and compassion, not anger, not disrespectfully, but speak the truth. Because that's the part about America that we have really lost. We used to speak up and tell the truth, not only about things that were happening in America that we disagreed about, but things that were happening in other countries around the world that we disagreed about. We were the people that everyone sort of looked to for justice and to do the right things. And I think for a lot of people, mostly politicians, we've gotten away from that. And the rest of us have been silenced for the most part. And we have to get over that. Again, though, it has to be done respectfully. Because you just can't go and scream and yell people down like the Black Lives Matter people do and organizations like that. But there are going to be times when you have to speak out when those people are trying to silence you. Because we have to focus on the truth. And if you do that, not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody's going to like what you say. But at least you can live with yourself and have dignity and honor in knowing what you did and who you are. Now, turning to other news. Locally in San Diego, there's been a pattern that's occurring, and I don't know what to think about it. But there have been bomb threats just about every week at the Naval Hospital here in San Diego. And it concerns me because even though nothing has happened yet, and hopefully it never will, you have to kind of wonder, is this, are these trial runs? Are we looking to see what needs to be seen in order to be effective in doing potential damage and harm at that hospital? It worries me. It really concerns me. Now, either this is the same person and they're mentally ill and they really need help, or we're talking about some organization, some terrorist organization that is looking to see what they can do at a naval hospital. And I know a couple of times there have been people who thought they saw people walking with guns or rifles, or heard what they thought were rifles. And I think that's happened at least 2 times this year. Now, those, I think, are probably people who are just, unsure about our society and the way it is, and anticipate something like that maybe happening at a military hospital. And then they hear a loud noise and they just automatically assume that they're being attacked. And I'm not faulting them or judging them for that, because I think the possibilities, again, when you have a president who doesn't want to acknowledge that we have potential issues with terrorist organizations here in the United States for the most part, you think, well, is anybody taking this serious? If the commander in chief isn't sitting there thinking we have an issue, is any other organization under him really taking this seriously? So I understand that. But, I mean, again, this is like the 13th or 14th time that this has happened. And it's almost becoming a weekly thing. And I'm not sure with our intelligence agencies the way they are, why aren't we catching these people? I mean, I guess some of it is their notes saying something about a bomb, somebody's written something on it or whatever. You would think after this amount of time that either the FBI or an agency within the military, somebody would know who's doing this or have a big clue as to where to look. But it just seems like it just continues to go on, and I just pray that this isn't people trying, like terrorists, trying to take time and figure out what's the reaction, what do people think when we do this, how long does it take them to get there, what steps are they taking, to evade a problem, or because you learn a lot from watching people. Is it somebody from within who is watching it? I don't know. I think it's, and you probably don't even know about it because it's probably not on the national news. I don't hear it really here too much locally either. It's kind of like, well, let's not even talk about it. So, that concerns me. When it doesn't get out in the public, what does that mean? How bad could that be? Should the public be told about this so they can kind of keep an eye out for what's going on? And that hospital's been there for a very long time. It's never had problems like this in the years, I don't know, 70s, 80s, 90s. I've never heard of any of these problems. Now, maybe there were, and I just didn't know. But I don't remember any problems like this. And now, again, like I said, all of a sudden, here it comes. And I happen to know somebody who works at that hospital who's told me, yeah, it just kind of happens like all the time. So it seems like it's being played down. That the employees they're not really concerned about it because it's like, well, this happens all the time. And maybe, if you're in the military, maybe that is something that just kind of happens all the time and you just get kind of numb to it because, after so long and nothing really happens, you're just like, well, it's just some crazy guy or, some whatever. And you don't take it as seriously maybe as it should be taken. So keep your eye on that, and if you hear any information about what's going on there or some things that you think of, you can always write me at Susan@SusanKnowles.com. So that's Susan@SusanKnowles.com. Let me know your thoughts about that. And again, if you have any information on that, then let me know that as well. And I have a guest this week. I want to tell you a little bit about the guest that's coming on. As you know, from time to time, I really like to do shows that show our veterans, showcase our veterans, showcase the problems of our veterans. And I don't have them on weekly, but I try to have them on maybe, once a month or as often as I can, and trying to bring you information that you really need to know. Again, I think as the, civilian public out here, we're not told information as much as we should be about the VA. It's just kind of like, oh, well, everything's fine. We're moving along. Yeah, there were problems, but we're taking care of it. When in fact, that's not happening. When in fact, there are wait times that are still going on, wait lists that are still going on. Allegations of people dying because they didn't get in. People committing suicide because they're not treated. And you've heard, 22 a day. And everybody that I've talked about, it's more than 22 a day, and I believe that. And it's so sad to see the pictures of those that have killed themselves because they just couldn't take it anymore. They couldn't take the weight, or they couldn't take whatever the case may be. Not enough assistance for them, mental health assistance, or getting in to see a psychiatrist, or for some people, taking too many medications, but medications they've been prescribed. And it's really sad. And I think if the public, it's easy for some of us in the public to sit back and think, well, yeah, I know that happens, but I'm not in the military, so there's not a lot I can do, or it's not happening in my family. And I think with the military, they are our family. What happens to them it should impact us, and I know that it does, the majority of us. And when I saw this posting on Facebook, oh my gosh, it was all I could do just to hold back. But this woman standing with holding a poster, and on it she had written the words that the U.S. military were the biggest terrorists. It's like, oh my gosh. I wanted to just, you know what I'm going to say. First of all, she can't stand there and say that unless the U.S. military is protecting her. And that's always the case, isn't it? These people that complain the most about how bad the military is in the United States are those that want to stand there and have First Amendment rights and freedoms and everything else and put down our military when the military is the one who enables them to stand there and put the military down. And secondly, my thoughts were, why don't you go over to the Middle East someplace, find a nice little ISIS camp, and stand there with your little sign, and see how long you can stand there with your little sign. See if you come back in one piece. See if you survive when the U.S. military, who takes care of you and prevents terrorists like those in the ISIS camp from hurting you, how long you survive without them. And this woman, this wasn't, some woman who is young and doesn't understand what's going on and maybe had her head filled with crap. This is a woman who should have known better. She was old enough to know better, but obviously she didn't. And so people like that, again, it burns me up. But I like to have people on who care about veterans and who care about veterans' issues. Now, as you know, I've had on attorney Ben Krause, who, if you go back and look at my shows on Spreaker.com, you'll find his show. Very popular show. I've had him on a couple of times. He is an advocate for veterans. He's a great, great representative for veterans. He's a disabled veteran himself, and I just think that veterans absolutely love him because they know, being a veteran, he absolutely cares about them, and he exposes the VA for who they are. And I've had other whistleblowers on my show. Brandon Coleman comes to mind. His past show is on there too if you want to listen to that. And this coming week, I'm looking to have a doctor on who treats veterans for traumatic brain injury, or TBI. And I want to hear from this doctor about what she's doing, how well veterans are responding to the issues. But again, I think it's something where the issues with veterans, we're, as the public, we're the ones that are going to have to continually get that information out there, because the media, they're so focused on the election, and maybe intentionally, but they're so focused on the election that they're not talking about anything else. The important stuff is just kind of getting pushed aside because, my gosh, Ted Cruz is talking today, or Donald Trump is talking tomorrow. We have to get out there and do that. And again, as I said, election's important, but there are so many other issues that are more important that we're not focused on because we're too busy seeing what's going on with the election. So I hope that's a show that you will listen to and invite your friends to listen to. And I'll be putting up information this week about that show, and you can find that out at SusanKnowles.com, SusanKnowles.com. And maybe you can promote that show so that other veterans who may be suffering from TBI can listen to the show and know where and how to get help if they're in need of it. Speaking of speaking the truth, I think there are people who never quite understand what that means. But there are people who, whether in their own minds they just can't understand reality, or the truth, or they just don't want to. There are some people who benefit anyway. You remember the woman, what was her name? Rachel Dolezal, who, let's say, felt like she was an African American when she's actually white. They call her a civil rights activist. That's right, a civil rights activist. And she made headlines last year after her white heritage was exposed. Well, you would think that would mean that, she'd be shamed, that she'd be shamed about what she did, that she would say, I lied because I thought this is what I wanted to do, or I wanted to be black, but I wasn't, and so this was the only way to be black. I mean, come on, just come right out and say what it really is, and then, perhaps people can go, okay, all right, I get it. I mean, you didn't go about it the right way, or maybe you thought you were doing something that was okay, but can you see now that it really wasn't truthful? No, that didn't happen. Instead, she has signed a book deal about race, because she's an authority on race because she's white while pretending to be black. So she's an authority. And she went on NBC and reported that she's been signed by independent publisher Ben Bella Books. Never heard of them, never want to hear of them, and wouldn't want a book published through them now for anything. She said the book is about this larger issue of if you don't fit into one box, and if you don't stay there your whole life, being identified from birth as who you are, what does that look like? Well, I'll tell you what that looks like. That looks like a pretender. Because try as hard as you may, Rachel, you're not going to be anything other than white. Biologically. You can pretend to be black. You can pretend to be something else. I mean, Elizabeth Warren, they say, pretends to be Native American. So why not Rachel? I don't know that Elizabeth Warren is writing a book as an expert in it, but apparently Rachel is. She identified as a black woman and was president of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP. There's a chapter in Spokane, Washington, until her estranged biological parents, those people, if they had just kept their mouths shut, Rachel could have kept on pretending. But her estranged biological parents revealed last year that her heritage is white. She subsequently resigned from the NAACP and lost her position, her teaching Africana studies at Eastern Washington University, while facing a wave of anger from African Americans. Well, you know, what are you going to do? Did you think that you were an expert in Africa? Here's the thing, again. Can a white person work for the NAACP and maybe even be, a chapter head or president there? I don't know. Why not? You don't have to be black to be an NAACP, right? I mean, do you have to be a certain race to be in any organization where race really shouldn't matter? I mean, just because you're with the NAACP, I know it's an organization for colored people. I get that. And it doesn't mean that you understand what it's like to be a person of color. But you could potentially be the president of that organization. If race doesn't matter, then race doesn't matter, right? So I don't have any problems with her doing that, as long as she's being honest about the fact, hey, I'm white and I'd like to be the president of your organization that represents people of color. Okay. Have no problems with that. Now, people in the NAACP may have problems with that. Well, that's their issue, not mine. And as far as her teaching the studies about Africa, I have no problems about that. If she's been to, let's just say that she's studied up on Africa, she's researched Africa, she has potentially been to Africa. I have no problems. Just because she's white, what's the problem with her teaching a course about Africa? The only problem is if she's lying about who she is, what heritage she is. To me, that's a problem. Lying is a problem for me. Again, some people, they may be absolutely okay with that. It's not okay with me. Is everybody perfect? No. Has somebody and everybody probably lied sometimes in their life? I would imagine so. Especially, when you're younger as a kid. Did you do that? No, Mom, I didn't. When you know darn well that you did. Okay. But this is more serious. And you know that. I know that. She knows that. And now she's going to prosper from her lies. She says she's really excited to write the book and really get into addressing some of the issues I've researched for many years. Race didn't create racism, but racism created race. Huh? Anyway, she said the book is planning to publish in March of 2017 and was partly inspired by her own experiences since last summer, and that she'd also heard a lot of stories from people around the world about their lives being somehow caught between boundary lines of race or culture or ethnicity. Again, what's the problem as long as you are being honest? If you say, I'm a black person and I want to be in the white culture and I want to live my life as a black person in the white culture, go for it. If that's what you want to do, go for it. If you're a white person and you say, I want to be in the Asian culture and I want to live my life as though I were Asian, but everybody knows I'm not because I've been honest about it, go for it. What's the problem? What is the problem? Got no problems with that at all. The problem, again, is in the lying. In December 2015, it always makes me laugh when this woman thought she could get away with these lies. And I know she's not the only one. There are people out there every day who try to convince people of a person, of being a person that they're absolutely not. We know that. But I mean, this was such a blatant lie to just pretend to be African American when you know you're not. It's just incredible to me. So she said in 2015 to The Guardian that she identified as black, for me, how I feel is more powerful than how I was born. Okay? That's your opinion. I mean that not in the sense of having some easy way out. This has been a lifelong journey. This is not something that I cash in, cash out, change up, do at a convenience level, or to freak people out or to make people happy. If somebody asks me how I identify as black. Nothing about whiteness describes who I am. Again, if that's the way you feel, absolutely no problems with that. If you want to immerse yourself into another culture, another race, live your life as that culture or race, go for it. Godspeed. Happy to see you be able to fulfill your dreams. But don't lie to people about it. Don't pretend to be that race. Don't say, I identify as that race, therefore I am. No. That sends a message to everyone that, again, it's okay to lie. That if you want to be what you want to be, when you want to be it, because you want to be it, it's okay. It's not. And this isn't the same issue as transgenders or anyone else. I mean, that's a totally separate issue from someone pretending to be a race that's not on their birth certificate. And I know she doesn't see herself as a pretender. And maybe this is a serious issue for her. I don't know. But again, there would have been no problems at all had she just been honest in the first place. And now she's going to go out and write a book about identifying, I guess, as a black person and what that was like for her and how horrible it's been with all the shame that she's been, tossed her way. And I don't know, I'm sure she'll have sympathizers who will be like, yeah, I feel that same way too. And, we're right there with you, Rachel. If that's really your name. At this point, I think I'd be asking for identification, and then who knows what you'll get when you ask for the identification. But again, come on, let's be honest, and then no problems would have resulted at all. In other news, we're being told that Obama is going to decide in about 60 days whether to declassify 9/11 documents. Apparently there's 28 pages of sealed documents which some suspect show a Saudi connection to the 9/11 attacks. And he's going to decide whether or not those documents should be declassified and released. Now, a former Florida Democratic Senator Bob Graham told Fox News late Tuesday that the White House had informed him that a decision on whether to declassify the documents would be made in 1 to 2 months. So what do you think is going to happen? As you know, George Bush didn't release that information. And what would be the benefit to Obama releasing that now? The only benefit, in my mind, would be if he could show, some type of GOP connection to 9/11. And I know there are a lot of people out there, truthers, who are saying, that our government caused 9/11 and all that. So, if that's the case, if that's to be believed, he's not going to release information that's going to show anything like that. He's not going to release information that's going to damage our relationship with Saudi Arabia, I'm thinking. So I'm not sure what he's going to do. Obama had come under renewed pressure to release the documents ahead of a planned presidential trip to Saudi Arabia for a summit of Gulf leaders next week. Well, he's not going to do it next week, I can tell you that. He's not going to release anything next week. Because if there's something in there potentially that's negative about the Saudis, he's certainly not going to release that before his trip. Because he's going to want the full Monty. Whatever he can get on his trip from Saudi Arabia, he's going to want to take full advantage of that. I mean, got to be some golf courses out there in the desert somewhere. Now, Now, of course, there are other Democrats who believe that the information should be given to the families. And this is a woman who is a Democratic senator in New York. She says, I don't know how the Saudi government will react to it, but I think it's just information. Well, do you know what the classified information is? I mean, and perhaps it's something that maybe Hillary sent on an email to everybody and, took the words classified off of it. So it's really not that important, or it's top secret, but it's not top secret. One of those kind of arguments. She says, if the president is going to meet with the Saudi Arabian leadership and the royal family, they think it would be appropriate that this document be released before the president makes the trip so that they can talk about whatever issues in the document. Really? They want to talk about the issues in the document. No, I think they would berate him and talk about, the oil prices going up in America. That's probably what they'd talk about. Now, supposedly Obama has confidence in their ability to consider those documents for release. Asked about the potential Saudi ties to 9/11, this is Josh Earnest, cited the 9/11 Commission's finding there was no evidence the Saudi government or senior Saudi officials funded al-Qaeda. But House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi said she too wants the pages declassified. As the former ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee and the House Democrat, this is how it's poorly written in the document, it should be and top House Democrat on the Joint Congressional Investigation looking into the 9/11 attacks, I agree with Bob Graham that the document should be declassified and made public, and that the Bush administration's refusal to do so was a mistake. I've always advocated for providing as much transparency as possible to the American people, consistent with protecting our national security. Oh, Nancy, sweetheart, we know that about you. You're just one of the most transparent people we've ever met, Let's see, what can I recall you saying? Oh, we have to pass it so we can know what's in it, that type. Yeah, that's you, Nancy. I can recall that. So I'm sure if you know, and you would know, that there's information in there that would harm your party, there's no way that you would want that information released. And you also know that it better not say anything negative about the Saudi government, because that would hurt you and your party as well. So I'm guessing that what is in that 28 pages, you'll probably get about 2 sentences from that, if it's released at all. And it'll amount to nothing. Or the other thing is it will make the GOP look bad, and that would be the only reason that the Democratic Party would want to have that information released at all. We all know that. So, what do the families think about that? The families of those that died in 9/11. I'm wondering if any of those families have ever felt that they've gotten the full truth, that what was told them was even partially true, and if they know really what happened that day, or if it's all just kind of confusing, as it is to some people who don't really understand what went on, what really happened, because there's so many theories out there of what possibly could have happened that we don't know about. And you know how it goes. Every time there is an event, there's always about 3 or 4 people at least who come up with, well, no, that didn't really happen, this happened. So I think after a while people just don't know what to believe. And I also think, again, when you're emotional, you just don't know what to believe. You're not thinking as clearly as you would otherwise. You just want answers. And those poor people. I knew my husband's relative had been there on business and I believe left early and wasn't in the towers at the time, but he had been there. And I can't even imagine what his family would have been going through had he been one of those in that tower. And my heart breaks for those people who lost family that day. I can't even imagine the hell that they live with on a daily basis because of it. And yet here we are all of these years later, and we're still wondering, our 28 pages, are they going to be released? And you have to wonder, what's on 28 pages? That's not 2 pages. That's not saying, there's nothing here. It's only a page or two. 28 pages. There's obviously something important on those pages that these families may never get to see because it may hurt, I think, more than the United States, the political parties and their relationship with another government. I'm not saying that the Saudis were involved. I have no idea. I really don't know. Because, again, I haven't done enough research in it to say one way or the other what I believe anymore. Because when somebody tells me something, normally in the past, years ago, I probably would have believed it. I would have believed the government and everything they said. Not anymore. I would have to thoroughly research it myself, and that would take way too long for something like that, and try to figure out exactly what really did happen. And for those, again, who have family members who perished that day, it probably is very important for them to know the exact truth. And it's something that they may never, ever get because of things like this, where we're all of these years, again, what is that, 15 years almost, we're still talking about 28 pages, whether we should release them or not. How many other documents are there that we haven't even talked about that are still classified that we're never going to release until we absolutely have to, if at all? I can't even imagine. It's mind-boggling. And we've basically taken that event. We don't even show it on TV anymore. We don't show the realities. We don't show the truth anymore. We don't show that day when people who were being set on fire or potentially being set on fire jumped out the window instead to avoid that. It's like, okay, you have 2 choices here. You're going to die in either one. Which one do you want to take? I can't even imagine, nor do I ever want to put myself in the shoes of somebody and see what that's like. I pray to God that never happens for anyone. Horrible, horrible event that day. But again, we don't want to talk about it. We want to keep it classified. We don't want to have it on TV. And kids who were born after 2001, I can only imagine what they're learning in school about it, if at all, what they were told about 9/11. Because I don't think very many kids understand that. And no wonder history repeats itself. Because we hide the history. We hide the truth most of the time. And then we expect somehow that we're not going to make the same mistakes again. I think 9/11, every anniversary and every history book, the truth should be told. Pictures should be out there that should be run every anniversary on mainstream TV. But no, we're not going to do that. We're going to pretend that it didn't happen. So we now have a monument set up that took us how many years to get that thing up, when you know as well as I do that could have been put up overnight. But for whatever reasons, political reasons, we chose not to get that monument up. And again, things like that, those are the important things. There are more important things going on all the time than what we're being filled with daily on TV in the mainstream media. That's why it's so important for you and I to keep our focus on what is real, what the truth is, and what is really important in our daily lives and in the long run. While the election is important, it's not the only important issue. So don't let it bring you down. Don't let it pull you into the fray of this back and forth conflict with supporters on either side. We're all Americans. We all have to stick together. This is the only country that we have, and we have to try to do whatever we can do that does the right thing, that involves truth, and that is who we are. Thank you so much. Until next time, this is Susan Knowles with Knowles on the News.